If you are planning to travel to or from the United States anytime in 2026, whether you are a US citizen, a green card holder, a visa holder, or a visitor, there is one reality you need to be ready for. Travel screening at airports and border crossings is becoming more automated, more data-driven, and more strict. And understanding who tends to get pulled aside first can be the difference between walking through smoothly and spending hours in secondary inspection wondering what went wrong. Stay with me until the end, because this will help you understand how modern border screening really works, what patterns tend to trigger extra checks, and what you can do right now to prepare for your next trip so you can travel with confidence instead of anxiety. Let me start by acknowledging what many people feel when they hear new screening, biometrics, or enhanced vetting. The first reaction is often worry. You may wonder if you will be targeted. You may worry that something in your background, your travel history, your country of origin, your immigration status, or even a simple mistake on paperwork could cause problems. Those feelings are understandable, but the goal here is not to scare you. The goal is to inform you, because when you understand how screening works, you can prepare for it. And when you are prepared, most situations become manageable. Here is the big change you should expect in 2026. Instead of relying only on one-off checks and manual decisions, border agencies increasingly rely on risk-based screening. That means your travel is evaluated using multiple data points at once: your documents, your travel patterns, and your immigration history. And sometimes an officer's observations at the counter. This does not mean most travelers will have problems. Most people still enter and exit normally. But it does mean that if your profile triggers certain patterns, you are more likely to be selected for additional screening, what most travelers call being pulled aside or sent to secondary. Now, what does risk-based screening mean in plain language? In the past, many travelers assumed screening was mostly about matching your name to a watch list or checking whether your passport and visa were valid. Those checks still exist. But today, screening is often broader. Systems can flag travelers for extra review even when there is no allegation of a crime, simply because something looks inconsistent, unusual, incomplete, or similar to patterns that have historically been linked to violations. So the question becomes, what kinds of things tend to raise your chances of being flagged? Let's walk through the most common categories, based on how CBP inspections typically work, what officers are trained to look for, and the types of issues that repeatedly send travelers to secondary inspection. One major category is travel history patterns. It's not only where you traveled, but how you traveled. For example, if you travel very frequently across borders, if you take unusual routes with multiple connections that don't match a clear reason, if you book last-minute international flights often, if you do repeated short trips that look like in and out patterns, if you have traveled to regions that are known to involve additional screening as a matter of policy. None of those automatically mean you did anything wrong, but they can lead to extra questions because officers are trained to look for patterns and consistency. The next category is document or identity inconsistencies. This can include things like your name on the airline ticket not matching your passport exactly, different spellings of your name across documents, a missing middle name on one document but not another, a passport that was replaced several times within a short period, documents that look damaged, altered, or unusual. Even small differences can cause delays because the officer's job is to confirm identity fast and confidently. If the system or the officer can't do that quickly, you may be sent for further verification. Another major category is entry and exit history with the United States. If you have traveled to the US before, CBP can see prior entries and exits. Patterns that often trigger extra review include any past visa overstay, any prior denial of entry, repeated secondary inspections, any prior removal or deportation issue, any prior misrepresentation finding, any complicated immigration history involving waivers, prior petitions, or prior status problems. Again, being flagged does not mean you will be denied entry, but it does mean you should expect more questions and you should be prepared to answer clearly and consistently. Another category is law enforcement or security-related flags. If someone is on a watch list or has an outstanding warrant, that is obviously serious. But beyond that, certain past encounters can still slow things down, such as arrests even without convictions, depending on what appears in databases, pending cases, certain offences that raise admissibility questions for non-citizens. If you have any criminal history at all, whether you think it was minor or not, do not assume it doesn't matter. For visa holders and visitors, even older issues can have immigration consequences. For green card holders, it can still create problems depending on the offence. It's wise to speak with an immigration attorney before travelling if you have any history in this area. Another big category is money and customs-related issues. If you are carrying more than $10,000 in cash or monetary instruments when entering or leaving the United States, you must declare it. Carrying that amount is legal, but failing to declare it can create serious problems. Also, if you are carrying items that look like commercial goods, large amounts of new merchandise, or anything that creates customs questions, it can trigger extra screening. A lot of travelers get nervous about this part, so let's keep it simple. If you are carrying a large amount of money, declare it. If you have gifts or items that might be taxable, be ready to explain and declare them if asked. If you have prescription medications, keep them in properly labeled containers when possible. Next is something many travelers forget: behavioral indicators. Even with automated systems, officers still observe people. If you look extremely anxious, confused, or inconsistent during basic questions, that can increase your chance of being referred for secondary inspection. This doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It means that nervousness, rushing, or over-explaining can accidentally make a normal situation look suspicious. One of the biggest triggers is inconsistency. Your answer doesn't match what the officer sees on the screen, what your documents show, or what you said 2 minutes earlier. Now, the next thing everyone wants to know is, who is most likely to be pulled aside first? Here are some common categories of travelers who often experience more screening. Again, not because they're guilty of anything, but because their profiles often generate more questions. Travelers who recently visited, transited through, or have ties to countries that routinely receive higher scrutiny. Frequent international travelers with complex itineraries, especially when the purpose of travel isn't easy to summarize in one sentence. Travelers with prior immigration issues like overstays, denied entries, or previous problems with a visa or status. First-time visitors from certain countries who already face more structured questioning as a matter of practice. Green card holders with extended time outside the United States or repeated long absences, because officers may have to assess whether the person is maintaining US residence. Travelers carrying large currency amounts because declaration requirements and financial reporting rules apply. And travelers who appear confused, inconsistent, or highly stressed at the counter, especially if they don't have basic trip information ready. Now, let's talk directly to 3 groups of people, because their situations are different: US citizens, green card holders, and visa holders, visitors. If you are a US citizen, you cannot be denied entry to the United States for simply being flagged. However, you can still be delayed, questioned, and in some cases, your devices or luggage can be searched under border authority. The best approach is still preparation and calm, consistent answers. If you are a green card holder, you have strong protections, but they are not absolute, especially if there are issues like abandonment concerns after long trips abroad or criminal issues. If you've been outside for a long time, you should travel with documentation of your US ties. If you are a visa holder or visitor, CBP has broad discretion to deny admission if they believe you are not eligible, not credible, or not consistent with the purpose of your visa. This is where preparation and clarity matter most. Now let's get practical. What can you do right now to prepare for travel under stricter screening? First, review your travel history before you fly. If you travel frequently, write down a simple list of your international trips over the past few years: where you went, when you went, why you went, how long you stayed. If you get sent to secondary, you don't want to be standing there jet-lagged, trying to remember dates and countries. Organization alone can reduce stress and speed things up. Second, make sure your documents are current and consistent. Check your passport expiration date. Make sure your airline ticket name matches your passport name exactly. If you have a visa or green card, make sure the names match across documents. If there's a small mismatch, like missing a middle name, fix it before travel if possible. Third, if you are a green card holder, know your time outside the US. If you've taken long trips, calculate roughly how long you were outside and be ready to explain why you traveled, why the trip was temporary, what ties you maintained to the US while you were gone. Bring proof of ties if you might need it, such as tax returns or proof you filed correctly, a lease or mortgage statement, employment verification or pay stubs, utility bills or other evidence of maintaining a home. A valid driver's license and bank accounts can also support the overall picture. Fourth, be careful and organized with what you carry. If you have prescription medication, keep it in original labeled containers if possible. If you carry medical devices, have a simple doctor's note if appropriate. If you carry gifts or expensive items, keep receipts when possible. If you carry more than $10,000, declare it. Always. Fifth, prepare mentally for secondary inspection so you don't panic if it happens. If you're pulled aside, the most important rules are stay calm, answer truthfully. Keep answers short and direct. Do not volunteer extra information that wasn't asked, but also do not play games or act evasive. Most secondary inspections end with you being released and allowed to continue. The delay is annoying, but it doesn't have to be traumatic if you expect it and you're prepared. Sixth, understand your basic options and rights. You can request to speak with a supervisor if you believe something is unfair or you don't understand what's happening. US citizens cannot be refused entry, but may be delayed. Green card holders usually should not sign anything, giving up status on the spot without understanding it fully. If an officer presents paperwork you don't understand, especially anything that sounds like voluntary abandonment, do not rush. Ask what it is. Ask to speak with an attorney if needed. Do not guess. Visa holders and visitors should understand that refusing cooperation at the border can lead to refusal of admission. So the best protection is preparation before you travel, so you don't end up in a situation where you're pressured to explain confusing details under stress. Now let me share an example of what being prepared looks like, because this is where many travelers win or lose time. Imagine a green card holder returning after a short family visit abroad. They get flagged for extra screening, not because they did something wrong, but because the system or officer wants a closer look at travel patterns. In secondary, the officer asks, "Where do you work? Where do you live in the US? How long were you away? What was the purpose of the trip?" If you can answer calmly and you have simple proof, like an employment letter, a lease, and proof of tax filing, most of the time the process moves faster because your story is consistent and verifiable. Now, for seniors and older travelers, there is an additional point that matters a lot: language and assistance. If you have limited English, you can request an interpreter. Do not guess at questions you don't understand. A wrong answer creates more problems than a slow answer. If you have mobility challenges, request assistance. If you have medical conditions, carry basic documentation. Screening is not supposed to punish seniors, but being organized helps avoid misunderstandings. And one more note for travelers who also fly to Europe. Europe is also moving toward more automated systems. The EU's entry and exit system, EES and ETS authorization, are part of a broader global trend. Timelines can shift, but the direction is clear: more registration, more biometrics, more automated checks. So if you travel internationally, expect screening to become more thorough everywhere, not just in the United States. As we wrap up, here is the message to remember. Yes, screening in 2026 is more advanced and more structured. Yes, some travelers will face more questions. But for the vast majority of people who have done nothing wrong, the impact will usually be a delay, not a disaster. The key is preparation. Know your travel history. Keep your documents consistent. If you're a green card holder, keep proof of your US ties. Declare what you're required to declare. Stay calm, answer clearly, and don't over-explain. If this helped you understand how border screening is evolving and how to prepare, share it with someone who is traveling soon, especially a parent, a relative, or a first-time traveler. And subscribe to Immigration Bulletin Hub with notifications turned on, because travel rules, enforcement patterns, and border practices can change quickly, and staying updated can save you hours of stress. Standard disclaimer: this is general informational content only, not legal advice. Procedures can vary by airport and officer, and your situation may have unique factors. If you have specific concerns, especially any immigration complications or criminal history, consult official CBP resources and a qualified immigration attorney before traveling. Safe travels, and take care of yourself and your family on your next trip.